Hello, this is Mrs. Kohler. This is your first podcast of the year, and today we're going to talk about characteristics of living things. So the characteristics of living things should be the topic at the top of your notes, and the essential question that we're going to address today is what makes something alive. Now there are 8 main characteristics of living things, and you should write down these 8 characteristics in your left side column of your Cornell notes. So these 8 things should be your 8 main ideas, and those are cells, organization, growth and development, reproduction, response to stimuli, require energy, homeostasis, and evolution. While you're watching this video, I will not be stopping for you to write your notes. If you need to write something down and need more time, pause the video. If you miss something, just rewind it to the spot where you missed something, watch it again, watch it as many times as you need until you get it right. I'm going to talk to you now about the 8 characteristics of living things. I'm going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to give you examples. So the first characteristic of living things is that all living things are made of cells. Some organisms are made of many cells, some organisms are made of one cell, but in order to be alive, it must be made of cells. So here you see cells from an onion, and you can see that this is made of many cells working together. These are what you typically think of as living things, the things that are made of many cells. But there are also some organisms that are made of just a single cell. So this is a planaria, and it has some specialized features that allows it to live on its own as one cell. You can see around the outside, those little short hair-like things are called cilia. They help it to move around. But this is a single-celled organism. But for something to be alive, it must be made of cells. Every living thing has some sort of organization. Organization means something is arranged in an orderly way. So every different structure in an organism has a function in the organism. Every structure is there for a reason. As you go through the human body, you start out with atoms and molecules, and those work together to build cells. The cells build tissues, tissues build organs build organ systems, and those organ systems work together to build an entire organism. So in this course, we're going to focus mostly on the molecule and cell levels, but you have to remember that those are all happening inside of a larger organism. And there's different levels of organization within every living thing. Every organism grows and develops. So growth is when an organism adds mass to their body. So that can be either growing taller or it can be growing fatter, but adding mass to your bodies is growth. Also, as organisms get older, they go through development and they change in unique ways. So here you see the growth and development of a butterfly. Not only is it getting larger, but it's also changing. It's changing from a caterpillar into a pupa, and then inside the pupa, the butterfly undergoes changes and emerges as it's still the same organism, but it looks totally different from the way it did before. That's development. Here you see a human being growing older. They start as a baby, they get taller, but our bodies do go through some developmental stages. There are some changes that occur in our bodies, like the proportion of the size of our head to our body changes as we get older. So here you see examples of both growth and development. Every living thing must grow in some way and develop in some way. So what you're seeing here is a vernal pond that we found that has salamander fry in it. So fry are babies. So these are little baby salamanders that are swimming around inside this vernal pond. Now these are the fry before they have grown into adults, so they look a lot different. So you're going to see close up in my hand, this is what a salamander fry looks like when they're really little, and then it undergoes growth and development and ends up looking like this guy. Reproduction is creating new organisms. And an important thing to remember with reproduction is if it is sexual reproduction where 2 different organisms are contributing, they must be of the same species in order to reproduce together, in order for those offspring to be fertile. And reproduction always passes genes on to the next generation. So here you see an egg cell. This is actually human egg cell, and a sperm coming to fertilize it. You can see there's a big difference between the sizes of the two cells, but in humans, reproduction occurs when a sperm and an egg join. In a lot of plants, you have seeds that are used for reproduction, and reproduction actually, in order to create the seeds, you actually have the essential sperm and egg, but then they form a seed that can be saved till later and planted when conditions are ideal. So these are two methods of reproduction. All living things respond to stimuli in some way. So a stimulus, that is singular for stimuli, a stimulus is something that causes an organism to react. So if you're startled, you jump. A response is how the organism reacts. So if you get startled, that's the stimulus. If you jump, that is your response. So here what you see is people don't usually understand that plants respond to stimuli. But here what you would have is off to the left is a light source, and these plants are growing towards the light because they want to get as much light as they can. So the light is the stimulus, and their response is to lean toward it. Here's another one that you're probably familiar with. This person accidentally touched a hot stove, and now they are crying and they've jerked their hand back. The stimulus was the heat, which caused pain, and the response was pulling back the hand and yelling. Every living thing requires energy. Living things must use energy in order to make their life systems function. Now that energy can either come from food that the organism eats, or it can come from the sun. So here you have Lilo and Stitch, and they are eating some ice cream, and the calories from that ice cream are going to provide energy to their bodies. Here you have a plant undergoing photosynthesis, and in this case it's using light energy from the sun to capture energy to be used later in the plant or to be eaten by another organism and then provide energy to them. So in the top picture you have energy coming from food, in the bottom picture you have energy coming from the sun. All living things maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is an important concept that's going to keep coming up over and over and over this year. Homeostasis means steady state. The prefix homeo is similar to the prefix homo, which means same. So homeostasis means we try to keep our bodies the same inside. Organisms want to keep their internal conditions steady. So one example is if you exercise, that causes your body temperature to go up, so you're going to sweat to cool yourself back down again. This is another example, and it's a little bit more in depth, but it shows how your liver and your pancreas work together to keep your blood sugar levels even. So if you're diabetic, you need to either take insulin or take pills or monitor your diet in order to have your body process sugar correctly. But in most humans, your pancreas and your liver communicate with each other, and they adjust the levels of insulin and glucagon that are produced in your body in order to keep your blood sugar at optimum levels. That's maintaining homeostasis, keeping a steady amount of sugar in your blood. All living things evolve. So evolution happens when adaptations, which are inherited characteristics that are passed to the offspring, evolution happens when adaptations become fixed in the gene pool and get passed on to subsequent generations, and that causes the species to change over time. So this is just one example of how there was one common ancestor that over time different populations branched off and got slightly different adaptations that led to new species. Now this original ancestor no longer exists. The only things we have are the end products. So when you hear people talking about like missing links in evolution, those missing links will no longer be alive today. We would have to look for them in the fossil record. But every single living thing does go through evolution during the course of its existence. Every single species undergoes evolution. through each generation that that species exists. Individual organisms do not evolve. It's just the species as a whole that undergoes evolution. So thank you very much for joining me for this presentation. Here are a couple of sources where I pulled pictures from. The other pictures had Creative Commons licenses, so they did not have to be cited. But you'll notice that most of my PowerPoints have bibliographies. I'm going to expect the same thing from you this year. Whenever you do a project, I expect you to show me what your sources are as well, so I'm doing the same. Thank you very much. Have a great day. If you missed any of these notes, be sure to rewind to the spot where you missed. See you in class.